The repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell was 17 years in the making, and it fulfills a promise that Senator Obama made during the presidential campaign. Joining me is William Cohen, who served as Secretary of Defense in the Clinton administration. He's the chairman, CEO, and founder of Cohen Group, based in Washington, D.C. Mr. Secretary, welcome to Bloomberg's Bottom Line.
Great to be with you, Mark.
Secretary Cohen, was this a civil rights issue?
I think it was. I've always believed that as far as looking at our military, in fact, any institution, you should base your judgments upon conduct and not condition. So we've had a situation, we've had racism in the military in the past, as we had in American society. We had sexism. The military has dealt with those very effectively. There were very strong objections by the military over the years to integrating blacks and whites, and we have found that we are a much stronger country as a result of the integration. And the same thing is true with respect to women. I know when I was serving in the Armed Services Committee, there were questions raised as to whether or not women could serve effectively in combat missions, such as flying helicopters or aircraft. And at that particular time, the military seemed to be strongly against it. But once the order came down, they've handled it very well, and they will handle this as well.
Secretary Cohen, 3 years ago, you told CNN that it was time to take another look at Don't Ask, Don't Tell. What led you to that thinking at that time?
I believe that the change had to come from within, that you had to have uniformed military officers who were the first ones to call for this. Otherwise, it would be seen just as a political maneuver or a political statement from elected officials. And I think it started with John Shalikashvili, who said that we needed to relook this policy, and it was not fair and needed to be reviewed at least. And I felt the same way.
And he was at that time the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. I'm sorry, go ahead.
He was retired. He was a retired chairman, yes. But he felt that it was necessary to do it.
Is that why you believe that Congress ignored calls for a repeal for so long, because they were waiting for the military brass to get on board first and propel this?
I think that's part of it. Also, society has changed. At the time that the Don't Ask, Don't Tell, quote, compromise was adopted, you may recall that there was absolute prohibition against serving, for gays to be serving in the military, so that if recruiters asked them if they were gay and they said they were honest about it, then they couldn't get into the military. So the Don't Ask, Don't Tell was seen as a compromise between openly serving or not serving at all. And we've seen with 17 years that there's a great deal of unfairness involved in that, and society itself has changed, and the military leadership has changed. So you had to have a John Shalikashvili, you had to have an Admiral Mike Mullen to endorse this and say this is a matter of our national security and has been fundamentally unfair to those who have offered their lives and limbs in the service of this country to be discriminated against.
And that's interesting, because you bring up Joint Chiefs Chairman Mullen. He did say at a hearing on February 2nd of this year, he told the Armed Services Committee that he thought that the troops would adapt. He said, "I never underestimate their ability to adapt." Are the men and women of the military ready for this change?
They will be made ready. This comes as an act of leadership. It's required upon all of the superior officers to inculcate values within the system, and to make sure that there is education. There's a transitional phase, to be sure. I think it's going to be tougher on some than others, but I think that ultimately this will be well handled. Once the order is given, what the military does best is they salute smartly, and they will step off. And I think this will be resolved over a period of some time, and I think the sooner the better, but I think it needs a period of adjustment. It needs education, and we need to have rules about what do we do about housing, what do you do about matters of faith, where people might have a strong religious faith and not wanting to have sharing a residence with someone who is openly gay. So those are issues that have to be resolved. I'm satisfied they will be resolved. It will be a stronger country as a result of it.
All right. The former Defense Secretary William Cohen joining us from Washington. Mr. Secretary, always a pleasure to have you on. Thanks.
Great to be with you, Mark.